The Las Vegas Raiders have made a big move by hiring a new general manager. They've chosen John Spytek, who used to be the assistant general manager for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Spytek is stepping up to lead the Raiders' front office. But not everyone is thrilled about this decision. Some people think it's a bad hire because the Raiders won't be able to match their new general manager with a head coach right away. Earlier, there was talk about Liam Cohen, the Buccaneers' offensive coordinator, becoming the Raiders' head coach. However, Cohen has decided to stay in Tampa Bay after signing a new deal this morning. So, the dream of pairing a general manager and head coach in Las Vegas will have to wait. Let's take a closer look at John Spytek. He's got over 20 years of experience in the NFL, starting from the bottom as a scouting assistant and working his way up. Spytek has been a scout, director of college scouting, and worked for teams like the Eagles, Browns, Broncos, and most recently, the Buccaneers. Now he gets his chance to prove himself as the Raiders' general manager. The Raiders have struggled with bad draft picks for years. For example, Dave Ziegler, the previous general manager, made questionable choices like drafting Tyree Wilson instead of Jalen Carter, who was clearly the best player available in that draft. Carter is now one of the top defensive tackles in the NFL. These kinds of mistakes have hurt the team's progress. Spytek's job is to change that. He needs to show he can find and develop top talent. If he succeeds, the Raiders could finally turn things around. When it comes to the Raiders' past draft picks, it's hard to know exactly who made the decisions. Was it Mike Mayock or John Gruden? Either way, some of those picks were head-scratchers. For example, drafting Clelin Ferrell with the 4th overall pick didn't make much sense. There were far better defensive linemen available in that draft, like Dexter Lawrence, who's now one of the best in the league, or Josh Allen, the standout defensive end. That draft was loaded with talent on the defensive line, but the Raiders managed to pick one of the worst options. And it wasn't just that pick. There were other questionable choices like Damon Arnett and Alex Leatherwood. Leatherwood's selection was especially puzzling, considering players like Christian Darrisaw were still on the board and clearly better options at the tackle position. These poor decisions over the past 5 to 7 years have held the team back. On the brighter side, Tom Telesco did a great job in his short time with the Raiders, landing players like Paris Johnson and Brock Bowers. Now, it's John Spytek's turn to step up and make the right calls for the team. Spytek has a strong resume, as he's held almost every position in an NFL front office. At the Buccaneers, their current general manager, Jason Licht, gave Spytek major responsibilities. Spytek was in charge of key tasks like organizing the NFL draft, hiring scouts, and ensuring the draft process ran smoothly. He also worked on the pro personnel side, collaborating with directors of scouting and player personnel to keep everything on track. Being a general manager isn't just about picking players. It's about leading a team and trusting others to handle specific tasks. Spytek excelled in that role as one of Licht's top lieutenants. He even played a part in bringing Tom Brady to the Buccaneers during his time as the director of player personnel. That move, of course, changed the team's fortunes in a big way. Now, Spytek has the chance to do something similar for the Raiders. He'll be the one deciding what makes sense for the team, including at the all-important quarterback position. While Tom Telesco nailed the draft, some people criticized him for sticking with Gardner Minshew as the quarterback. Spytek now has the opportunity to make big decisions that could shape the Raiders' future. Let's talk about Aidan O'Connell and why some people hold Tom Telesco accountable for sticking with him. While Telesco was the general manager and made the final decisions, it's not always easy to go all in on a quarterback. A general manager's job is to ensure the team is solid overall. Good roster, a capable head coach, and a strong foundation. If you gamble everything on a quarterback but the rest of the team isn't ready, the chances of success are slim. Worse, in a few years, things can fall apart completely. We've seen this play out before. Take the Chicago Bears a few years back under Ryan Poles. They had a bad reputation, and even top coaching candidates like Dan Campbell and Nick Sirianni didn't want to interview for the job. Over time, Poles worked to change that narrative. The Raiders are in a similar position now. They want to be Super Bowl contenders, but they're not quite there yet. We saw this reality with Ben Johnson, who had a chance to join the Raiders but chose the Bears instead. Similarly, Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, also stayed away. According to a report by Adam Schefter, Cohen recently turned down a head coaching opportunity with the Jaguars to remain in Tampa Bay, where he signed a lucrative new deal. Now, here's how the NFL process works for hiring coaches. When a team wants to interview a coach under contract with another team, they must submit an official request to the NFL. For example, the Jaguars submitted a request to interview Liam Cohen on January 7th, before the Buccaneers' season had ended. Tampa Bay lost on January 12th, and by January 13th, Cohen was free to interview with other teams. However, he ultimately chose to stay in Tampa Bay. The only team we know for sure that showed interest in Cohen was the Jaguars, as they filed the necessary request. Reporters like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport often get their information from these official requests filed by teams. This behind-the-scenes process is a big part of how coaching hires work in the NFL. In the NFL, there are a couple of ways reporters and insiders like Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport get their information. One way is through official notifications. For example, when a team files a request to interview a coach under contract, the NFL notifies agents and media members at the same time, usually around 1 p.m. Eastern. Another way information gets out is through agents. Take Pete Carroll, for example. The Raiders interviewed him, and his agent shared the news. Since Carroll was not under contract and his season with the Seahawks was over, the Raiders didn't have to file an official request. This is why the public only found out about the interview after it happened. Now, in the case of Liam Cohen, things are less clear. Since his contract with the Buccaneers had expired and their season was over, the Raiders wouldn't have needed to notify the NFL if they reached out to him. We don't know if the Raiders, or even teams like the Cowboys, contacted him, and we probably never will. Personally, I was excited about the idea of pairing Liam Cohen with John Spytek. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Now, the Raiders need to focus on finding their head coach. Some say the Raiders might go with Pete Carroll, which makes sense since they've already interviewed him in person. However, it's smart to wait until the new general manager signs off on the decision. There's also a possibility the Raiders are waiting for one of the remaining playoff teams to be eliminated. For example, Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, could be on their radar. Todd Monken is another name being discussed. He's reportedly already had a virtual interview with the Raiders. One thing to understand about the NFL is that tampering happens, even though it's technically not allowed. For instance, it's hard to believe that Tom Brady didn't reach out to people like Ben Johnson or Liam Cohen beforehand to gauge their interest in joining the Raiders. It's just how things work behind the scenes, even if it's not official. It's hard to imagine the Raiders aren't keeping their options open and quietly reaching out to other coordinators, especially ones still involved in the playoffs. For example, someone like Joe Brady might have already told teams he won't take interviews until the season ends. That could explain why the Raiders haven't made an official move for him yet. If Brady is still under contract, the team would have to wait for his season to finish before making a formal request. As the Raiders move forward, it will be fascinating to see how things unfold. Let's take a closer look at John Spytek's track record with the draft. One thing to note, as an assistant, Spytek doesn't officially get credit for the Buccaneers' successful picks. That credit always goes to the general manager, as they're the ones making the final decisions. While Spytek played a role in these drafts, the GM ultimately gets the recognition, and that's how it should be. That said, Spytek was part of a front office that drafted extremely well. Let's highlight a few notable picks. In 2014, the Buccaneers selected Graham Barton, a very solid center. While I personally might have preferred Jackson Paris-Johnson over Barton, he's still a reliable choice. Barton could be a top 7 to 10 center in the league for most of his career. Another strong pick was Takoy Smith, a safety out of Georgia. He had an excellent rookie season and has shown great potential. Then there's Bucky Irving, a running back selected in the 4th round, 125th overall, in the most recent draft. Many consider him the steal of the draft because of his impressive performance so far. For the Raiders, Spytek's history of being involved in drafting top talent could be critical, especially since they need to address both the quarterback and running back positions this year. Spytek was part of the Buccaneers team that brought in Tom Brady and Baker Mayfield. While he may not have been the primary decision-maker, he was definitely involved in the process. One draft that particularly stood out was the 2023 draft. Personally, I loved the pick of Kai, someone I was very high on even before the draft. Back when the Raiders had the 7th overall pick, I had said that if Jalen Carter wasn't available, Kai would be my choice. Jalen Carter might be the best defensive tackle in the draft, but Kancey is easily a top 10 player and an outstanding pass rusher. That was a great pick in my eyes. Another strong pick in 2023 was Cody Mauch. He's an interesting player because no one was sure if he would play guard or tackle. Right now, he's starting at right guard, and his college tape from North Dakota State was very impressive. Going back to 2022, Luke Goedeke was another surprising pick. He wasn't even considered the best tackle from Central Michigan. His teammate, who went to the Colts, had that title. But Goedeke has proven to be a solid pick and is now the Buccaneers' starting right tackle. That's a good outcome for someone who wasn't expected to shine as much. Other notable picks include Logan Hall, a talented defensive tackle drafted early in the 2nd round, and standout players like Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr., both of whom have made a big impact. However, since John Spytek was just an assistant during these drafts, he doesn't get full credit for these picks. It's always the general manager who gets recognized. Looking ahead, Spytek has a lot of work to do with the Raiders. The team needs a running back, a quarterback, and upgrades to the offensive line. While some fans might think the O-line is fine, I disagree. Look at the Eagles' offensive line. They dominate, and that's a big reason for their success. A strong offensive line opens up the run game and gives the quarterback time to make plays. The Raiders have a solid left tackle for the next few years and a top-tier center, but the other spots need improvement. DJ Glaze might develop into a starting right tackle, or he could be a great guard. Either way, they need to address those positions and maybe even use their 6th overall pick on a right tackle. The Raiders also need a true number 1 wide receiver and some key upgrades on defense. Managing contracts will be critical. Allocating cap space wisely to keep the right players is essential. Players like Trayvon Moehrig, Nate Hobbs, Malcolm Kuntz, and Clelin Ferrell are part of this mix, but not all of them will stick around. Spytek's background in player personnel could help here. Retaining a core group of players is important for long-term success. Stability allows players to build chemistry and improve as a team. It's an exciting time for the Raiders, and we'll see how Spytek builds the team. Let me know what you think about the Raiders' new general manager. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.